This is Lawrence Romanowski from Calgary, Canada, and we're in Stanley Park, and this is our annual European car show, which takes place in July every year, and is a nice local gathering of cars from the Calgary and area. And I wanted to do a video and show some of my favorite cars in the show. So let's start by going and looking at a Sietta. And this is a Grant Kinzel restored car, and Grant does all the work on it. So when he first got it, it didn't have one of the fenders, and so he photographed in 3D one fender, digitized it, put it in a CAD CAM system, and then used a 5-axis milling machine to turn out a buck, and then formed the other fender. Of course, he reflected this fender digitally, and then made the other fender from scratch. So quite an amazing job, quite a great car. I think this car would probably be at home and invited to just about any collection or any concours car show. A really
That's a lovely bike.
Stunning example of an early Sietta. Beautiful car.
The next is the Geek.
Okay, and this is a new acquisition for the Focus Design Collection, and it is a Bizzarini GT America. So, of course, it is Italian, and the story was that after the Palace Revolt in the early 60s from Ferrari, where a whole bunch of the engineers just left, Bizzarini went to ATS, and they came out with an ambitious Grand Prix car and a road car, and it was a commercial failure. And then Bizzarini went on his own with some backing and came up with the 5300. So there was a 5300. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Yeah. And a 5300 Strata. There's some race versions, but these are road cars. So they're Corvette engine cars. And this one is a 7-liter car. And the GT America were the versions of the Bizzarini that came to the U.S. The Italian cars were alloy, and the North American cars were fiberglass, except this car is alloy. And this one is unique in that it has a ventilation system in it, which the car pretty desperately needed. And so it just came up. The paint, I'm not sure if it's original, but it looks like 30 or 40 years old. But I mean, this car has to be one of the prettiest cars of the 60s, and it also probably is the most sought after of the group of Italian-American hybrids with their Italian styling, and but American engines, usually the 327 or the Chrysler engine. So this is a 1967 Bizzarini 5300 GT America, and what a fantastic car. Now, I just said 7-liter, didn't I? That's another car. That's an ISO Grifo we'll see in a minute. And this is the 5.3 liter. So incredible car. And Fred's just going to commission it, and he's not going to restore the car. So it was driven until about 30 years ago. And I guess the wife had enough of it, and the car was parked. So fantastic car. And let's a Ghia 450 SS. So another Italian-American hybrid. This car just got driven up from San Francisco and arrived here yesterday. And so this is again another similar vintage cars in the late 60s, 66, 67, something like that. And it's got a Chrysler Barracuda drivetrain in it, and another kind of a eclectic 60s Italian-American hybrid. Neat car, expensive when they were new, and combining Italian coach building, but North American engines and air conditioning and so on. Great car. And here we have a nice row of British cars, the Jags on that side, and we've got an assortment of Morgans and Astons and TVRs, etc. And some great Lotuses, this one in the wonderful black and gold JPS colors. I remember as a kid there was one of these on my block, and I was always fascinated by looking at this World Championship car constructors, and I thought this was just the neatest thing ever. Anyway, so we've got the Lotus twin cam engine in the back and transaxle behind that, and fiberglass body and galvanized steel chassis. So impossibly low, but what a neat car. I have a soft spot for these cars. They're a little bit of work to keep going, but they're a wonderful machine. Morgans, ash framed, steel bodied. The V8s are genuinely quick cars in a straight line and even around the track. They have no suspension movement. They've got a 1930s design sliding pillar front suspension, and which basically doesn't move, and all the compliance comes from the flexibility of the body, not the suspension. So on a smooth road they go quite quickly, and these are wonderful cars. And this one looks like an earlier one from the 60s. It's a 4. So they had plus 4s and 4.4s, and the 4.4s were the Ford engine cars, and the plus 4s were the Triumph TR engine cars, at least in the 60s. So the plus 4 had a little bit more performance, although nowadays there's so many modifications for that Ford engine. But how's it going? No, I'm doing a video. How's it going? But the Ford engine cars are just as fast. But anyway, wonderful old Morgan. Okay, and then we've got this. We've seen this at Coffee and Cars. This is Rob's DB4, fresh out of a restoration. They made, I think, 4 series of DB4s. They would have started in '59, and I'm not sure when the DB5 would have come out. Maybe 60. Go ahead, guys. Maybe 63 or 64 maybe. And so they would have 4 versions of the DB4. This is I think it's a Series 3. I'm not sure what all the differences are. Pretty slight, but of course this car was famous for being introduced and claiming a 0 to 100 miles an hour back to 0 in 25 seconds. So that was quite something. We can see the Superleggera. A little script on the hood, and that of course is the patented touring of Italy method of making a body, where you have the thin metal tubes wrapped in like a burlap, and then with the aluminum skin draped over that. So the period Maseratis, Bristols, Astons were made like that, and this was the first Aston to have the Superleggera body, at least the first mass-produced Aston. The DB24 and the DB24 Mark III, which is the car I have, they're different. They're an aluminum body, but it's a built-up steel kind of tube frame, but a monocoque box section frame. Okay, so the Tadak Merrick 3.7 liter straight 6. Normally this would have had 2 big SUs on it, but the competition versions, the DB4 GTs, would have had the triple Webers, which you can see. So fresh restoration done in Victoria, and the car is spectacular in every detail, and it's being much admired here. This is a Canadian car, and was sold to this dealer here, Plymley Motors in Vancouver. So DB4, everybody's lusting over that car. And this is my car here. I've got the '59 Aston, but I just picked up this '76 and '76 V8 coupe called the Saloon. So if you go from the DB24 Mark III, then there's the DB4s, DB5s, DB6s. And then in '67, they would have come out with a new body style. William Towns designed. William Towns also did the Lagonda. He was a seat designer, and then penned this car. So very American influence car. And they would have come out with the DBS, and the first version of that had the 6-cylinder from the DB6, because this engine wasn't quite ready. So it was John Surtees who was the development engineer, and they ran in '67. They ran I think a 5.1 liter version of this in a Lola T70, competing in the Nürburgring and Le Mans. And the bottom end of the engine wasn't working. They said fuel pump failure, but that's kind of like, honey, I have a headache. It really means the engine blew up. They say fuel pump failure because that sounds better. Anyway, by '69 the engine was ready. The car became the DBS V8. It was sold alongside the DBS Straight 6, and then David Brown ran into some trouble in the early 70s, liquidity issues with his tractor business, and sold the company, and then it just became the Aston Martin V8 Saloon. The Vantage followed in '77, the Volante followed soon after that. But this body shape was the mainstay of Aston Productions for 20 years, from '69, finally going out of production in 1989. And what else do we have here? Kind of a neat TVR. This is a fiberglass bodied car on a square tubular, or a square tubed frame. It's a Triumph TR6 drivetrain, and kind of a neat car, fun car, and I guess that's the Webasto sunroof, which is kind of cool if it doesn't look so TBR. Okay, so let's go on. Here's a car I absolutely love. It's a Daimler DS420, and it's a grand old regal limousine. So the Daimlers were of course owned by Jag, and they in most of their cars they differed only by, in some cases, the engine, because Daimler had a 2.5 liter hemispherical V8, where Jag used the straight 6. And that Daimler engine is in the Dart, which I think there's a Dart over here somewhere, so maybe we'll go take a look at that. Anyway, so the Daimler always had the fluted radiator, and they were wonderful cars. Daimler won Pebble Beach in 2006. Great history, and in fact the guy who did the body on that car is here today, and he's working on an ISO Griffo, which we can show you as well. But anyway, that's an aside. So a great big, wonderful old limousine, and you know, if you look at it really closely, it starts to look a little bit odd. Like, for instance, some of these switches look kind of modern, and then it's got a row of these like idiot lights, and that looks kind of modern. And in the back, of course, it's very traditional Daimler. And what just kills me about this car is that it's a 1990, and it's still running on the Jag twin cam 6-cylinder engine with 2 SU carburetors, if you can believe it. This car is a 1990. It didn't change for 20 years. Anyway, I think it's a hilarious car. Some young guy owns it, and I think he just has a ball driving this thing around. But wonderful old car in original condition. And I love this car too. So this is the 60s BMW Coupes. The model designation is an E9, which I guess is the 9th BMW platform that they made. And so they would have come out in the well, there was a 2-liter car, but with a really kind of unfortunate nose. And then they redid the nose, and it became, I think, it bumped up the displacement. I think it became, I'm not sure if it was a 2500 or a 2800 on the CSI, and it really sort of transformed the appearance of the car. And then, let me think, CS was carbureted and CSI was injected. This is a 2800 CS, so we can see the carburetors there. And they date from the late 60s and early 70s. So let's just see what year this one is here. 1971, and we can see the BMW straight 6 engine, which they're still using in concept anyway, and twin carbs. This one has been very, very nicely restored. Harold Crittenden's a local enthusiast. He always has, all of his cars are very authentic. And